Welcome back to the TV20 Weekly News Wrap-Up. I'm Ciarra Nelson. Well, Love's All That Makes Sense, a mother-daughter memoir. This is a book that's getting rave reviews, and this is written by Cleveland resident Anika Francis. Now, her mother, Sakeenah Francis, has suffered with schizophrenia. Thank you for being on the show today.
Excited to be here.
Now, I just want to get right into it. What a wonderful book, and I agree with that too. Love is all that makes sense at the end of the day. But your mom, you decided to write this book, and you've been writing it together over the past 5 years because your mom was affected with schizophrenia. She had, according to the book, looked like she had a normal life like everyone else. She was a homecoming queen. She was married, middle-class family, and then she was struck with this mental illness.
Yes, it was interesting because while my mom had the mental illness, we never discussed it for many, many years. She's been in recovery for the past 15 years, so there was so much about her story that I never knew. So she began writing me letters, and those letters became part of the book. And so she writes letters to me explaining what it was like for her to have the illness and her just long road into recovery. And then I share what it was like for me to grow up with a mother with schizophrenia.
Okay. How was your impact? Tell me a little bit of your story, what brought you to writing this book and why you decided to write your daughter letters and how this kind of affected you.
Well, I was calling NAMI about something for children of parents of mental illness, and they didn't have a program for it, but they had a speakers bureau. Okay. So I started going, and I told them in the bureau I have many stories to tell, so I was sending Anika some of my speeches. And she said, "Mom, you ought to write a book." And I said, "Anika, you ought to write a book too." So we started on our book. We thought it'd take us about a year. 5 years later, it's coming out now.
Okay. Now tell me what, so we all know again what NAMI stands for, because I know you're involved with that.
National Alliance of Mental Illness.
Okay.
And they have a lot of good groups for peers, consumers, and a good group for family members. Because a lot of family members, they feel so alone. And once you take their 4-week course, you feel not so separated from everybody else. And they give you a nice instructional book to take home. So it's a good program.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about, one must ask about your life, because a lot of people don't understand that. And myself, I remember a friend of mine, her brother has schizophrenia, and a lot of people just didn't understand it. But you know, they're people too, and you have to respect that. And they say that, physicians say all of us to some degree have a mental illness. But talk about how this just changed your entire life. What brought you to even this point of writing the book?
When I was first diagnosed, I didn't have really good care. The psychiatrist would just say you're going to take medicine the rest of your life. And when you hear that, when you're just faced with something like that, it's discouraging. But for 12 years, I had crisis years. I was in and out of mental hospitals, off and on jobs, taking and not taking medicine. And I did this for like 12 and a half years. Then I realized it was affecting my daughter, my father, my sisters, and I'm a loving person. And if medicine's all that it takes to keep me being that loving person, medicine for me it is.
Okay. And I know you're loving, I mean, the love is all that makes sense. And Anika, I want to ask you, I can just sense from sitting here that you have such a love and admiration for your mom. Tell me how this affects you and how you obviously want to just educate the community and educate people about this mental illness.
Well, the reason I decided to share my story is because a lot of times you don't hear from children of parents with a severe mental illness. There can be a lot of stigma with mental illness, so a lot of times people don't talk about it, and you especially don't hear from the children, but we can be really impacted. I was only 4 when my mother was diagnosed, and no one really told me much about her sickness. So I just thought of it as a sickness of the mind, because in many ways it was still my mother for me. And so I wanted to speak to that so that we learn more about the hidden children, which is kind of what children like me are known as, and just to educate that, because I think that's so important, so we can also realize that there can be hope and that recovery is possible.
Now, what are you all doing? I know that you're holding workshops now and different things like that to educate. What are some specific things that you talk to your audience about?
Well, we actually just did a workshop here with the Adams Board, and we did a workshop on the keys to recovery. And so we talked about our story and the challenges, but we also talked about some of the things like hope, choosing something better for your life, and things like resilience, because a lot of times you just hear about the challenges with the mental illness, and there are definitely those, but we also wanted to talk about where the hope lies, because that's important. So that's a big part of our message.
What are some of the key messages in your book? What do you want to, without giving too much away, what are some things that you want your audience to take away?
Well, I would like them to, for me, mental health centers have been very helpful for my recovery. You're with your peers, sometimes called consumers, and they can notice and we can notice when something's not quite right. And I always say a sick bird can help another sick bird. And that's what I kind of see groups at centers like, helping each other. And
well, and another piece too, as far as children, because again, a lot of times we don't hear a lot about the impact on family members. And as a child growing up with a mother with schizophrenia, I was also traumatized in a lot of ways as well. So there was a lot of healing that I also needed to do. And so a big message is for family members and especially children to reach out and get help, because help is there. And that stigma piece can be something that can be very hurtful for families, but there is help and there is support.
So you are truly a success story. You're not letting this overcome you, you're overcoming it, which is awesome. And you're helping your mom and yourself to educate the community, which is the heroes like yourself is what makes the difference in the community, to educate people about it. So is there anything else you want to say about your book, about all that you're doing? Because I understand you do speeches and you're just really taking this by storm to educate and empower the community.
Well, there is a quote in the book that my mom says, "It's not what happens to you in life, it's what you do after it happens." And there was a lot that happened to us in our life. It definitely wasn't always rosy for us by any stretch of the imagination, but life can knock you down and there can be challenges, but there can also be ways that we get back up. And we speak to that a lot in our story. The story is very gritty, it's very raw. We're pretty honest about what happened to us, but we're also honest about our long road to recovery, and it wasn't a short one.
Okay, all right.
I'd like to say one thing. My dad, he rolled with the punches with me for about 12 years. And when I was in recovery, doing well, I was able to look after him when he developed Alzheimer's. In the nursing homes, I took good care of him, washed his teeth, brushed, so he knew I loved him. And my daughter said I redeemed myself with him. So family members, what I would like to tell them is, don't count us out.
Okay. Please give us some contact information for how people can connect with you as far as the education part, the workshops, and also to pick up a copy or order a copy of this book.
Well, our book, Love's All That Makes Sense, it's available on Amazon, Books A Million, as well as Kindle and Borders. And you can reach, I have a website, www.anikafrancis.com, and you can contact me there, and I can also get in touch with my mother as well.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and all that you all are doing. I want to thank you. And I want to thank you so much for watching TV 20. That's all for your news wrap-up, where you get the whole story. Make sure you tune into TV 20 to get detailed coverage of what's going on in your community. You can watch TV 20 or catch us online at city.cleveland.oh.us. For all of us here at TV 20, have a great day, and thanks for watching.